After decades of working with hundreds of people from young adults drowning in credit card debt to 60-year-olds still unable to retire, I've realized they all share one same mistake. They don't understand the difference between an asset and a liability. It sounds simple, right? But that simple misunderstanding keeps countless people stuck in the same exhausting loop, earning more, spending more, and never truly feeling free. I want you to imagine this: one morning, you wake up, open your bank account, and realize even while you slept, money kept flowing in. Not because you won the lottery, but because you've built assets, things that work for you even when you're not working. That, my friends, is financial freedom. But most people live the opposite way. They spend their lives working for liabilities, things that quietly take money out of their pocket every single day. I have a friend named Mark, hardworking, good income, beautiful house, nice car. Everyone thought he was successful. But one day Mark called me and said, "Ben, I don't get it. I work nonstop. I don't live extravagantly, but I'm always short on money." When I looked over his finances, it became clear Mark owned a lot of liabilities disguised as assets. A luxury car he bought to reward himself, a house far bigger than he needed, the newest tech gadgets he had to have. None of those things made him money. They only created expenses. I asked him, "Mark, if you stopped working tomorrow, would any of these still bring money in?" He went silent. And in that silence, I knew he'd finally seen the truth. You see, most of us were taught how to earn money, but no one taught us how to make money work for us. Schools don't talk about cash flow. Parents say, study hard, get a good job, buy a house, buy a car, and you'll be fine. But no one warns us that those same things bought the wrong way can become traps. I once worked with a couple in California earning over $200,000 a year. Sounds amazing, right? Yet they lived paycheck to paycheck because nearly every dollar went into sweet liabilities: a Tesla, luxury vacations, new furniture, and a house too big for their needs. Every month they worked just to pay bills and repeated the cycle. Meanwhile, another client of mine, Sarah, earned only $60,000 to $1,000 a year, but she invested consistently in ETFs, bought a small rental property, and set aside 20% of her income to buy assets. 10 years later, Sarah retired comfortably, living off passive income. The couple still working hard, still stuck. I share these stories not to judge, but to show you something powerful. The difference between financial freedom and financial struggle isn't income, it's awareness. Wealthy people understand the flow of money. They ask, will this put money into my pocket or take it out? Most people, however, ask, can I afford it? Those are two completely different mindsets. Have you noticed we all say we want freedom, but every shopping decision we make often chains us tighter to a golden cage of liabilities? The nicer the car, the longer the loan, the bigger the house, the heavier the burden. We call it a stable life, but often it's a life imprisoned by what we own. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy life. I just want you to see that true freedom isn't about how much you own. It's about how many of your possessions actually make your life lighter. If you've ever felt like you're running hard but getting nowhere, maybe it's not because you're not working hard enough. Maybe it's because you're running in the wrong direction. You're chasing liabilities when you should be building assets. So stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, if I stopped working today, what in my life would still bring me income? If the answer is nothing, don't feel bad. That's the moment you awaken financially, because the journey toward financial freedom begins right there with awareness. I truly believe anyone can achieve financial freedom, not by luck, not by inheritance, but by learning to see clearly what's an asset and what's a liability. That's the first step. And it's also the most important one. There are ideas that sound like everyone understands them, but very few people actually live by them. And assets and liabilities are the perfect example. I've asked hundreds of people during financial consultations, what do you think an asset is? Most answered, it's what I own. Sounds reasonable, right? But sadly, that's the biggest mistake in financial thinking, because ownership doesn't equal value. Something you own can look like an asset, but if it takes money out of your pocket every month, it's really a liability. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I met a man named David, 52, an engineer from Texas. David was proud. He had just finished paying off his $500,000 house. He called it the greatest asset of my life. One day I asked him, David, how much income does that house bring you each month? He paused, then said, well, none. In fact, it costs me electricity, taxes, insurance, maintenance. I smiled and said, then David, it's not really an asset. It's a liability because it's taking money out of your pocket. He looked at me surprised and confused. But it's my house. How can that be a liability? I replied, if you rented it out and it generated positive cash flow, then it would be a real asset. But as long as it costs you money, no. Matter how beautiful or luxurious, it's still a liability. At that moment, I saw something shift in his eyes, like he'd just taken off a mask that society had placed on the word success. So what's the real definition? An asset is anything that puts money into your pocket. A liability is anything that takes money out. It sounds so simple a child could understand it. But the difference between the wealthy and the struggling is this: one group truly lives by that definition, while the other just hears it and forgets. The rich see assets differently. To them, an asset isn't something to show off. It's something that makes showing off unnecessary. A rich person might drive an old car but own assets that pay them every month. A poor person might drive a brand new car but has to work 8 hours a day just to make the payments. I once coached a woman named Linda, a 45-year-old high school teacher. She told me I'm investing in myself, so I bought a new SUV. It makes commuting easier. I asked her, does that car make you more income? She laughed. No, but it makes me happy. I nodded, then said gently, Linda, there's nothing wrong with happiness. But if that happiness costs you the chance to invest, then it's trading future freedom for temporary pleasure. She went quiet, then softly said, no one's ever told me that before. And that's what I want to tell you today. There's nothing wrong with buying things that make you happy, but you must know what you're buying: an asset or a liability, because one gives you freedom, the other gives you chains. Let me explain it simply. Imagine you buy a car. If you use it to drive to work, run errands, take your kids, that's a necessary liability. Fun. But if you use it for deliveries, rideshare, or to make income, it becomes an asset. Objects have no fixed nature. Whether something is an asset or a liability depends on how you use it. Poor people buy based on emotion. The middle class buys for comfort. The rich buy for cash flow. Ask yourself, will this thing bring me money or will it make me spend more? It's a small question, but if you ask it every time you spend it, can change your entire financial life. From a behavioral science view, studies in financial psychology show that humans crave instant gratification more than long-term reward. We buy things that make us happy now instead of investing in things that keep us secure later. That's why credit cards exist. They make you feel rich for 5 minutes and poor for 5 years. I'm not against enjoyment. I just want you to realize this: true freedom doesn't come from buying more. It comes from understanding what you're buying. Let me give you another example how wealthy people build assets. A client of mine, Robert, 38, was a software engineer in Seattle. When he got his first big bonus, he didn't buy a new car or take a luxury trip. He bought a small apartment and rented it out. 6 years later, that apartment not only paid off his student loans, but also gave him enough cash flow to quit his job and do what he loved. I once asked him, Robert, why? Did you buy an asset when everyone else buys liabilities? He smiled and said, because I don't want to look rich, I want to be free. The lesson is this: financial freedom starts with how you define what you own. If you define it wrong, you'll live in the wrong direction. But once you see clearly, every decision becomes simpler, wiser, and lighter. I've seen people completely transform just by realizing this. They start reviewing every expense, not to live cheap, but to ask a deeper question: who is my money really working for? Me or someone else? If your money only feeds liabilities, you're working for the bank, the car company, the credit card firm. But if you make your money work for you, you're becoming the true owner of your life. You don't need to be a financial expert to understand this. You just need to ask one small question before every purchase: is this an asset or a liability? Because that small answer will decide whether you remain a servant to money or become free in your own life. I want to say this slowly because it's important. Most people aren't poor because they don't have enough money. They're poor because they don't understand how money really works. I've sat through hundreds of consultations, met thousands of people, and I've noticed one thing they all share: they don't know why they're always stressed about money, no matter how hard they try. And the root of that stress starts with one small but dangerous confusion. They don't know the difference between a real asset and a disguised liability. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But behind that confusion lies something much deeper: psychology, society. education, and culture. And if you don't see it clearly, you'll keep getting trapped in the cycle of liabilities no matter how much you earn. One, because we were taught how to make money, not how to use it. From childhood, we were told study hard so you can get a good job. Get a good job so you'll have a stable income. And a stable income means happiness. It sounds logical, but that's where the trap begins. No one ever told us in school, making money is just the first step. What matters more is learning how to make money. Work for you. We learn math, literature, and history, but not cash flow. No one taught us that $100 today could become $10,000 in the future if invested wisely. No one told us that something you buy for pleasure today might cost you your freedom 10 years from now. I once met a college student in New York named Kevin. He worked extra hours for a year to buy the newest iPhone. He told me I deserve it, I worked hard, and he was right. But I asked him a simple question that made him stop. Kevin, if you invested that money in 10 years, it could buy you a week in Europe. Do you want the phone now or freedom later? He smiled, but I knew that question had planted a seed in his mind. We were never taught how to plant financial seeds, only how to harvest. 2, because society has taught us to confuse looking rich with being rich. Open social media for 5 seconds. What do you see? Sports cars, mansions, designer watches, exotic vacations, perfect smiles. The world no longer measures wealth by real value, but by appearance. We don't just buy things to have them, we buy them so others can see we have them. A study in the US found that 70% of luxury car owners can't comfortably afford their cars. They didn't buy them because they needed them. They bought them to be noticed. Economists call it consumption signaling, spending to signal status. I once had a client named Michelle, 37, a banker. She had a brand new BMW, a house with a pool, and lived in a fancy neighborhood. But when we sat down, she admitted, Ben, I have zero savings. Every month, I'm a few $100s in the red. She lived in a beautiful house, but in truth, the house owned her. And she called it an asset. I gently said, Michelle, your car isn't the problem. But if it takes away your financial freedom, it's no longer a symbol of success. It's a velvet-covered burden. She laughed softly, tears in her eyes. She wasn't crying over money, but because she realized she had spent years chasing the shadow of wealth without ever touching its substance. 3, because modern consumer psychology makes us addicted to ownership. Liabilities aren't just physical. They're habits. The habit of spending to soothe emotions, the habit of shopping when we're sad, lonely, or trying to prove our worth. Science calls this emotional spending. When you buy something new, your brain releases dopamine, that feel-good hormone that makes you feel accomplished. But that feeling only lasts a few hours. Then you need another hit, another purchase to feel happy again. It's the cycle of consumption, addiction. Like sugar, the more you have, the more you crave until you forget what enough feels like. A friend of mine, Peter, once said, I'm not addicted to alcohol or cigarettes. I'm addicted to Amazon. He laughed, but behind that laugh was pain. He bought things he didn't need just to fill an emptiness inside. And he's not alone. A 2023 study found that the average American spends over $1,400 a year on things they don't really need. We work harder and harder just to buy more things that make us work harder. 4, because of disguised liabilities, the most dangerous trap in personal finance. Not all liabilities are bad, but the most dangerous ones are the ones pretending to be assets. Your home, your car, your degree, even your phone, they might look like assets but drain your pocket daily. For example, a house you live in, if it only costs you money without generating income, that's an emotional liability. A car, if it doesn't make you money, it's a moving liability. A phone, if it's just for scrolling, it's a digital liability. An expensive degree, if it doesn't create value, it's an intellectual liability. In my class, Financial Freedom 101, a student once asked, Ben, can investing in myself ever be a liability? I said, if you learn to show off, it's a liability. But if you learn to act and create value, it's an asset. The room went silent. Then someone chuckled softly, that kind of laugh that comes when truth sets you free. 5, because buy now, pay later tricks us into thinking we're rich. Credit is a powerful tool if you understand it, but it's a double-edged sword if you abuse it. Today, with one swipe of a card, you can own almost anything. And that illusion makes people feel rich because they can buy without cash. But that's not financial power. That's Financial illusion. True wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you owe. The poor always say, I'll pay later. I once asked a group of young adults, how many of you could live 3 months with no income without touching your credit card? Only two hands went up, not because they didn't earn enough, but because they'd already sold their future for the present. 6, because we never define what enough means. This might be the deepest and most subtle cause of all. No one ever teaches us how to define enough. We just keep thinking a little more will make me happier, but that little more never ends. I once asked a friend who owned a business, when will you feel like you have enough? He said, when I make one more million. A year later he did. I asked again. He laughed and said, maybe 2 more. That's the trap of a system with no finish line. When you don't know you're enough, you'll always spend more, invest emotionally, and lose peace. True freedom isn't having more, it's knowing you already have enough. To close, I want you to remember this. None of us were born understanding money, but anyone can learn if you pause, reflect, and ask the right questions. If you've ever felt like I work hard, but I never seem to get ahead, understand, I've been there. I used to buy things to prove I was successful until I realized those things were stealing my freedom. And the moment you start to see the difference between assets and liabilities, you're already ahead of 90% of people out there. You don't need to get rich overnight. You just need to understand correctly and you'll move in the right direction. Because in finance, understanding is more important than speed. The wealthy don't earn money through effort, they earn it through awareness. And you can start right now with one question, will what I'm about to buy put money in my pocket or take it out? In the next part, I'll show you how to completely shift your mindset, turning every dollar you spend into a brick that builds your freedom. Because wealth doesn't begin in your wallet, it begins in your mind. I want to share 2 stories with you. 2 men, same city, same era, same opportunities, but 2 completely different choices. 10 years later, they met again, and their lives had become so opposite that it was hard to believe they started from the same line. One was named John, the other Michael. Both worked in tech in California, earning around $90,000 a year. Both were hardworking, family-oriented, and dreamed of financial freedom. But one thing set them apart. John bought liabilities. Michael bought assets. The story of John, the man who always looked successful. John was the kind of person you'd admire. He drove a brand new Tesla, lived in a 2-story suburban home, and took his family to nice restaurants every weekend. On social media, his photos were full of smiles, sunsets, and wine glasses. But I knew John beyond the filters. He came to me, once his face full of worry. Ben, I don't get it, he said. I make good money, but I always feel suffocated. I never seem to have enough. We sat down. I asked him, John, can you list what you own? He started a $750,000 house, 25-year mortgage, a $65,000 Tesla, brand new furniture, an 85-inch TV, and some tech gadgets, and a few annual vacations. After he finished, I asked gently, do any of those bring money back to you? He smiled awkwardly. No, but they're my rewards for working hard. I nodded. I'm understood. But I told him something few people want to hear, John. You're not rewarding yourself. You're chaining yourself with golden ropes. He went quiet. I drew 2 columns on paper: assets and liabilities. Under assets, he had only one item, $5,000 in savings. Under liabilities, half a page of our expenses. Each month, John earned about $7,500. But between mortgage, car payments, insurance, taxes, and bills, over $6,800 was already gone. He had a few hundred left, just enough to survive until the next paycheck. I looked at him and said, John, you're not free. You're renting the illusion of wealth. And that's what millions of Americans do every single day. We trade real freedom for the appearance of it. The story of Michael, the man who built freedom one brick at a time. Around the same time, Michael, John's old colleague, lived a simpler life. He drove a 10-year-old Toyota, rented a small apartment near work, and invested nearly 30% of his income. At first, friends laughed. You're living like a miser, they said. He smiled back, no, I'm just making sure my future isn't controlled by bills. Every month, Michael invested in ETFs, bought dividend stocks, and saved for a rental property. After 3 years, he bought his first apartment. 6 years later, a second one, and his passive income passed $1,500 a month. While John fought to keep up with payments, Michael used his cash flow to invest even more. His money began working for him. 10 years later, they met again at a reunion. John still looked successful, but he was tired, anxious, and sighed, "I wish I had more time for my family." Michael, calm and relaxed, said he was reducing his workload, traveling, teaching his kids about investing and planning for early retirement. Not because he was lucky, but because he chose assets over liabilities. Two lives, two philosophies. Their stories weren't just about money. They were about mindset. John lived by the rule, "I work to get what I want." Michael lived by, "I let what I own work for me." One life was a cycle: earn, spend, owe, repeat. The other, invest, cash flow, freedom, happiness. Two directions, two destinies. One looked rich but lived under pressure. The other looked ordinary but lived truly free. The difference wasn't money, it was mindset. I once asked Michael, "How did you stay patient while everyone else was enjoying life?" He said something I'll never forget. "Ben, they buy short-term pleasure. I buy long-term peace." I nodded. Because that's the blind spot of modern society. We live in an age where everyone knows how to spend money, but few realize money is spending them. When liabilities become generational habits, the scariest thing isn't how we spend, it's how our habits spread. John had a 12-year-old son. The boy saw his parents stressed over bills, yet still saying, "We deserve a bigger house." Michael's 10-year-old son was different. Michael took him to his rental property, showed him the numbers and said, "See, son, when we save and invest, money can help us live lighter." A child raised in the culture of liabilities learns to spend for validation. A child raised in the culture of assets learns to invest for freedom. That's the difference between two futures. The question I always ask my clients is this: if you stopped working tomorrow, what would still bring you money? If your answer is nothing, don't worry. That's not failure, that's awareness. And awareness is the first step to freedom. The story of John and Michael isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to remind you you always have a choice. No one is born knowing how to build wealth, but anyone can start by understanding assets and liabilities. 3 lessons I want you to remember. 1. Don't let disguised liabilities fool you. Everything shiny has a price. Sometimes that price is your freedom. 2. Buy assets before you buy emotions. When your assets pay you, you can enjoy life without fear of losing your job. 3. Make your money work for you, not the other way around. Every dollar you spend is a little employee. The question is, are you letting that employee build your house or someone else's? I'll never forget the morning I got an email from Michael. It said, "Ben, I did it today. I officially quit, not because I'm tired, but because I'm free." I smiled, not because of how much he earned, but because he understood the greatest truth. Financial freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less and knowing what truly matters. As for John, a year later, he called me exhausted. "Ben, I think I need to sell my car. I can't take it anymore." I didn't judge him. I just said, "It's okay, John. What matters isn't what you did wrong. It's that you're finally ready to see clearly." Because awareness is always the first step to change. You can be John. You can be Michael. But what truly defines your future isn't where you are today, but the direction you choose tomorrow. I know, when people hear the words financial freedom, they often think of something distant, big. Investments, real estate, the stock market, or huge numbers. But you know what? Every great journey begins with a simple awareness. No one becomes rich overnight, but anyone can begin their freedom with a single decision today. Today, I want to share with you how to truly transform from someone who buys liabilities into someone who builds assets. No fancy theory, no need for millions, just a willingness to see money differently. 1. Start by looking in the financial mirror. I often tell my clients, if you want to change your life, first look honestly at it. Before you think about investing, sit down and face your cash flow. Write it down on paper or in Excel, every source of income, every expense, fixed and flexible, every debt, every small recurring payment you usually forget. When you see all the numbers in front of you, something clicks. You'll realize how many tiny expenses are quietly leaking away your future freedom. I once worked with a woman named Laura, 42 years old. She said to me, "Ben, I'm not extravagant, but I never seem to have money left." We reviewed her expenses. I pointed at a few small things: 4 cups of coffee a day, Streaming services she never watched. Little shopping trips just for fun. Total over $600 a month, I told. Her Laura's $600 won't bankrupt anyone in a day, but it's enough to keep someone from being free for life. And that was step one, becoming aware of what's quietly draining your wallet. Two, classify every expense with two simple questions. Once you've looked into your financial mirror, it's time to sort things out. Look at each expense and ask one, does this help me earn more money in the future? Two, if I stopped working today, would it still bring me income? If the answer is no to both, congratulations, you found a liability. If the answer is yes, that's an asset. For example, spending $50 to learn a new skill. Asset. Buying a new phone just because the old one feels outdated. Liability. Putting $200 into a dividend fund. Asset. Spending $200 on designer shoes as a reward. Liability. Try this for 1 week. You'll be shocked by how much money slips away unconsciously. 3. The 10% redirect rule, turning spending habits into investment. Flow. If investing feels overwhelming, start small. Very small. I call it the 10% redirect rule. Every time you want to buy something, especially something you don't truly need, pause for 5 seconds and ask what? If I redirect 10% of this money toward an asset, where could I be in 5 years? Let's say you spend $300 a month on non-essentials. Redirecting just 10% or $30 into a dividend fund or high-yield account after 10 years with an average 8% return that becomes over $5,400. Double it to 20% and you're building your foundation for freedom. It's not about the amount, it's about the habit. That habit is the line between those who live off money and those who let money live for them. 4. Learn to see long-term value instead of short-term emotion. I once asked a group at a financial seminar, why do people buy so many liabilities? One said, because they like pleasure. Another said, because of social pressure. I said, because they've never tasted freedom. Freedom is waking up in the morning with no fear of bills, no boss to dread, no need to do something you hate just to stay afloat. But to feel that peace, you must learn to delay short-term pleasure for long-term serenity. Each time you're tempted by a shiny purchase, ask, how long will this make me happy? A week, a month, a year. Then compare it to the joy of owning an asset, one that could bring peace for life. 5. Build your asset fund, the simplest way to start. I always tell my students, financial freedom doesn't begin with wealth, it begins with intention. Create a separate account called Asset Purchase Fund. Not a savings account, an investment account for freedom. Each month, direct at least 15% of your income there before spending anything else. Treat it like a mandatory bill, just like electricity or water, except this. One pays your future freedom. And when the fund grows, enough use it to buy real assets, a dividend-paying stock, an index ETF, a tool that generates passive income, or even knowledge that boosts your earning power. Each asset is a brick, and you're building the house of freedom one brick at a time. 6. Reduce liabilities not by cutting joy, but by replacing it. Many people fail because they think saving means sacrifice, but it doesn't. You don't have to give up joy, just change how you enjoy. Instead of spending $100 on a fancy dinner, spend $50 and invest the other $50. Instead of trading your car for a new one, keep it for another year and invest the savings. Instead of chasing instant pleasure, invest in lasting satisfaction. Freedom doesn't come from not spending. It comes from spending right. 7. Automate, the real secret of the wealthy. As I once said in a video, financial discipline doesn't rely on willpower. It relies on systems. The wealthy don't save manually, they automate it. Set up an automatic transfer of 15-20% of your income into your investment account the moment your paycheck arrives. Don't wait to save what's left, because you'll never have leftovers if freedom isn't your first priority. I call this automated freedom. Once it's set up, you don't have to force yourself. Your system does it for you. And over time, your assets will grow quietly, like a tree watered daily. 8. Learn, invest, persist, the trio of lasting wealth. Investing isn't luck. It's a skill, and anyone can learn it. Study little by little. Learn about compound interest. Learn about index funds. Learn to read basic financial statements. Each piece of financial knowledge is an invisible asset. No one can take it away. And it will protect you from the traps of liabilities for life. I still Remember my mentor, a financial advisor in New York, once said, Ben, truly wealthy people don't need to show off their money, already knows what to do. 9, change your environment, change your mindset. If you're always around people who talk about cars, trips, and designer brands, you'll soon spend like them. But if you surround yourself with people who talk about investing, learning, and creating value, you'll start thinking differently. I once had a group of friends who met every weekend at a cafe. Instead of talking about sports, we discussed cash flow ideas. After 3 years, half of them had achieved financial independence. Not because they earned more, but because they thought differently. Environment is the first invisible asset you should invest in. 10, finally build a new relationship with money. See money differently. Don't fear it. Don't worship it. Treat it like a friend. If you respect it, it'll always work for you. Every dollar you spend is a little soldier you send out. That soldier can die in battle when you buy liabilities or return home with 10 more friends when you buy assets. The question is, whose army are you building, yours or someone else's? Financial freedom isn't a dream, it's a habit. It begins when you dare to ask, will this purchase bring me closer to freedom or farther away? No one changes overnight, but you can start today with one small choice, one skipped coffee, one small investment, one first asset. I've seen hundreds of people change their lives through small, consistent steps. And I believe you can too. From now on, don't just ask, how much money do I have? Ask, how much of it is working for me? Because when your money works for you, instead of you working for money, that's when you are truly free. I want to share something with you, something that took me over 20 years to truly understand. Freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. For many years working in finance, I thought freedom meant having a lot of money. I worked day and night investing, saving, building my own business. But one day I looked back and realized I still wasn't free, still anxious, still afraid of losing, because I had only traded the pressure of not having money for the fear of losing it. That's when I met a man named Henry, 68 years old, living in the countryside of Oregon. He didn't have much, just a small home, a vegetable garden, and modest savings. But I had never met anyone so at peace. I asked him, Henry, how do you live so calmly when so many younger and richer people seem constantly stressed? He smiled gently and said, because I don't spend all that I have and I don't need all that others have. That sentence changed everything for me. It wasn't just advice, it was a philosophy. 1, living below your means isn't poverty, it's wisdom. Many people hear live below your means and think it means deprivation. It doesn't. It means consciously choosing enough. Poor people spend to prove they're not poor. Rich people spend to maintain their image of success. Wise people live below their means so money never controls them. A friend of mine, Mark, once said, Ben, don't need to earn more, I just need to keep more. He's not stingy. He eats well, travels, and enjoys life. But every dollar he spends has purpose. He understands that every dollar saved is a brick that builds future. Peace, too. Simplicity isn't giving up, it's intelligent choice. Simplicity doesn't mean cutting joy out of your life. It means understanding what truly matters. I've seen people making $200, $1,000 a year who are still stressed because they overspend. And I've seen others earning $50,000, saving 15%, investing steadily, and sleeping peacefully at night. The difference isn't income, it's mindset. Simple people know that they don't need 5 cars to feel confident. They don't need a big house to feel safe. They don't need to buy everything to prove anything. True freedom is when you stop trying to prove. 3, the psychological trap that makes us overspend. If you live in the modern world, you're surrounded by systems designed to make you spend. Advertising makes you feel incomplete. Social media makes you compare. Consumer culture makes you afraid of falling behind. But remember this, you can't buy real respect with things you don't need. A study in the US found that 85% of people spend money to impress people they don't even like. Isn't that ironic? We go into debt live under pressure and stress ourselves out just to look okay. But true freedom isn't about how others see you, it's about how you feel when you're alone. 4, how to practice living below your means in everyday life. Let me share some practical principles, not theory, that I and my clients have used. 1, the 70-30 rule. Live and spend within 70% of your income. Save or invest the other 30% for your future and emergencies. You don't need to start at 30%. Start with 5%, then 10%, then grow it slowly. The key is consistency, not perfection. 2, buy less, choose better. Every time you want to buy something, wait for 7 days. If after a week you still truly need it, buy it. If not, you've just saved money and gained peace of mind. Every time you want to buy something, wait 7 days. If after 7 days you still truly need it, buy it. If not, you've just saved money and gained a little peace. 3, learn to enjoy enough. Write down this question: what truly makes me happy? You'll realize most joy doesn't cost much. A quiet morning dinner with family or a good book. 5, a true story from pressure to peace. I once coached a couple in Chicago, Thomas and Maria, both hardworking, earning well, yet drowning in credit card debt. They always felt like they were chasing life. One day, Thomas said, "Ben, we're tired. We make money but never see it." I suggested a simple experiment. For 3 months live, as if their income had dropped by 20%. No loans, no new purchases, just essentials. 3 months later, they came back smiling. "Ben, we realized we can live just fine. We were simply living too much." They kept that lifestyle, invested the extra money in ETFs, and bought a small rental apartment. 3 years later, they paid off all their debt. 6 years later, they reached financial freedom. No miracle, no magic, just learning to live below their means and above their fears. 6, freedom is a choice, not a reward. We often think, when I have more money, I'll be free. But the truth is, when you know what's enough, you're already free. Freedom doesn't wait at the end of wealth. It begins the moment you stop running and say, "I don't need to chase anymore. I choose peace." True wealth isn't about having everything. It's about choosing fewer things, but meaningful ones. Close your eyes and imagine this. One morning, you wake up, no worries about bills, no fear of losing your job, no need to do what you hate just to survive. You walk outside, breathe deeply, and realize you are free. Not because you have millions, but because you live in alignment with your values. That's the moment I want you to reach. And let me say this clearly: financial freedom isn't a destination, it's a way of life. Every small decision, how you spend, save, invest, lays another brick toward that freedom. If you're watching this video, I want you to do one thing after it ends. Grab a piece of paper and write this question: how much do I truly need to live happily? Write down that number. Then look at your life and ask, what's keeping me farthest from that number? Maybe it's a debt, maybe it's a spending habit, or maybe it's simply the fear of not having enough. Choose one small thing, just one, to change this week, because small steps in the right direction can lead to a completely different life. You don't need to be rich to start being free, but you need freedom to start living rich. And if there's one thing you do today, choose to live below your means, because within that simplicity, you'll find what the world has been chasing for centuries: peace, freedom, and true happiness. My friend, if what I've shared today touched you even a little, don't let it stop here. Because one right mindset, one small change, today can create an entirely new life in a few years. I've always believed when you change how you see money changes how it comes to you. And if you're beginning to see money differently, tell me, leave a comment below. Share your story. I read everyone truly, because every story carries a lesson. If this video helped you, hit the like button so YouTube knows these messages deserve to spread, and share it with someone you care about, someone tired of financial stress or trying to find hope again. Because you never know, one video, one kind message can change someone's life. And if you'd like to walk this journey together, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with me for more stories about financial freedom, smart investing, and the art of simple, abundant living. I don't want to just speak through a camera. I want to build a community of people free with money and peaceful at heart. Because freedom isn't a privilege of the rich. It's a right to live for all of us. Thank you for staying till the end. I'm Ben, and I believe that if you start today, one day, you'll smile and realize freedom was never far away. It's always been right here in how you choose to live each day.